Thank you, Senator. Senator Marielle Smith, you have the call.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. I'm also rising to make a contribution in response to the address by the Governor-General at the commencement of the 47th Parliament. And to hear the bold, nation-changing agenda of the Albanese Labor government reflected in his words was a really proud moment for me in this place. We as a government have so much work to do. We took a plan to the election that would deliver considered and serious reform across Australia. Our plans for early education and care will ensure 97% of Australian families have better, cheaper access to care. We're committed to the development and implementation of an early years strategy to identify how best government can coordinate the various government services impacting the early years. This is about delivering real outcomes, better outcomes for our youngest Australians, something I am deeply passionate about. We've promised to rebalance the industrial framework in Australia, to provide more job security, stronger wage growth and to close the gender pay gap. Deputy President, as a proud and parochial South Australian, I have seen close hand the impact of declining manufacturing in this country. It has affected my state perhaps more than any other. And at times during this previous government, we've seen that decline in manufacturing be aided and abetted by the decisions that they have made. The collapse of our car industry in South Australia had consequences which will be felt in South Australia for generations to come. But it's not just the car industry, it was the uncertainty given to the workers at Osborne in the submarine program, who were left uncertain year after year, Christmas after Christmas, about the future of their jobs, about the opportunities for them in our state. Australia should be a country that makes things, great things, and our government will make it one again. Australians also deserve to have faith that when they go to work, they get a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. This is a pillar of fairness in Australia. It's part of who we are as Australians. Something else that we will deliver. Another pillar of fairness, Medicare, which after a decade of the coalition government has been run down in the face of growing demand. This pandemic that we've all been living through the past few years has been a stark reminder of the importance of a well-funded and robust public health system, which only Labor prioritises, only Labor delivers in government. And I'm proud of our commitments during this election that will strengthen Medicare further. We built Medicare, we believe in it, and we will protect it. We're going to make it easier to see a doctor, cut the cost of medications for millions of Australians. We've got reforms to children's health care, including ending the newborn health screening lottery and providing better care for children with hearing loss. The task of Labor governments is always urgent. And once again, we've entered government at a hugely challenging time for our nation. I am absolutely committed to meeting the moment in which we find ourselves in as a government and as a community, and I know every member of the Albanese Labor government is as well. We don't intend to waste a single day of government in facing and tackling the challenges facing the Australian people and our community. I was elected in 2019, and since I've been elected, I've travelled all over our state, talking to families, talking to workers, talking to kids about what they wanted out of their government and what our plan was for South Australians. From Ceduna to Murray Bridge, Gawler to Payneham, the message was clear that South Australians wanted better. They wanted more from their government and they wanted something fairer. And particularly, over the last couple of years, they've wanted change. They felt unheard, unlistened to, and they felt like the previous government, didn't have their interests at heart. Aged care workers have told me about the desperate conditions they've faced every day at work, feeling underpaid, overworked, not given the respect that they deserve. I will never forget the incredible privilege I had to join a group of aged care workers in Adelaide as they bussed from their workplaces to the CBD to protest the government's failures on aged care. I was invited by my good friend Donna, a proud and fearless advocate for the hard-working and dedicated aged care workers she works alongside every day, and of course the residents that they adore too. As we bussed into the city and we got closer into town, some of these workers started playing music on the bus. And one of the songs they put on was a song by Sir Elton John. I'm not going to sing it, but the words were, "I'm still standing after all this time." It was a light moment on a serious day, but I couldn't get those words out of my mind, because what apt words to describe a workforce which had been pushed to breaking point, not just during the pandemic, but in the years before it, where aged care was treated with nothing short of neglect. For these workers, for the residents they care for the families who love those residents, we finally, under this government, have a chance to do better. I heard from countless families and caregivers disheartened by their ability to access affordable, quality early learning and care where they live, in the communities where they live. Families weighing up the financial implications of another day of care, making huge decisions about their lives, their work and their children because the costs of care were crushing. But not just families, our early learning educators, left completely behind during the pandemic, who felt unseen and unvalued by government, a government that, in what was one of the lowest days I think we've had in this building, where we had reports of members of the government labelling childcare as outsourced parenting, one of the most vile attacks our early learning educators have experienced, and of course deeply offensive to the families who rely on them. I've been really proud to stand up for our educators. We've got a big agenda for early learning, but I'm keenly aware that it's not everything. My ambition for early learning knows absolutely no bounds, and it's something I will continue to fight and advocate for in the years ahead, because it matters. It matters to children in care, their opportunities and their outcomes. It matters to productivity. It matters to the kind of nation that we want to build. It matters when we're looking at smashing intergenerational disadvantage. And it matters for the amazing workforce which deliver this profound service to our community in educating our littlest minds. Now, before the pandemic caused such great devastation in South Australia, we had another kind of devastation with the summer bushfires that struck Kangaroo Island and the Adelaide Hills. With homes and businesses destroyed, we had lives lost. Now, these sorts of disasters are devastating, and they're only going to get worse. They're only set to get more severe and more frequent because of the effects of climate change, and my community in South Australia knows it. South Australians want action on climate change. They're sick and tired of the climate wars, and they voted for us because they want these wars over. And I'm so proud that in the other place we've seen the start of that work happen today, and we have more to do. We're going to end these climate wars. We're going to get the action that we need, and we're going to do it in a way which brings business, which brings workers, which brings environmental groups together on a journey to meet our responsibilities and do what we know we need to do for our planet and our environment. I also heard from young South Australians. I have heard from them over the past few years and still now about the difficulties they face with housing, either buying their first homes or continuously dealing with ever-increasing rents, and that's just gotten much worse since 2020 in South Australia, with prices skyrocketing and rental availability going down. And on top of these challenges, they had a government forcing them to drain their superannuation accounts to tap into that limited resource when they were doing it tough. I heard from small and medium businesses who rely on the pipeline of defence manufacturing in South Australia, but fearful for their future with the continuous delays to decisions around the future of work at Osborne. Businesses who now have a new assurance from our Defence Minister, who's committed to manufacturing the nuclear submarine fleet in Adelaide. Each of these stories paints a picture of an Australia tired of 9 long years of a government with no agenda, no plans and no desire to build a better future for Australia. And these people represent just a fraction of the community I represent, who I talk to, seek to represent, to help, to assist in my work as a senator. It's one of the best parts of what I get to do, is getting into different communities in our state, talking to people, finding out what's going on the ground, and then bringing that back into this place and fighting for change. And there's one community in particular in South Australia which has absolutely captured my heart during my time as a senator, and that's the community of Ceduna and the surrounding areas. In this community, I was shocked to learn that their pleas for help in replacing their local health clinic, which was dangerously run down and had been ignored for years by governments who kept passing the buck. This clinic, of course, is Yardoo Health, a clinic I've spoken about many times in this chamber, a clinic riddled with mould, asbestos, water damage, where a staff member said that they had been electrocuted at their desk trying to plug something into the wall. Another staff member talking about the roof falling in during the rains. A clinic where too many people walked in, said, "Oh, that's terrible," and just kept on walking. This clinic will now be rebuilt by the Albanese Labor government. I'm so proud of this commitment, and I'm deeply grateful to the Honourable Linda Burney MP and Minister Kaya Marin SA for their work here as well. Acting Deputy President, since the election, the most common sentiment I've heard from South Australians in talking about the result is relief. And it's a feeling that I felt on election night too. Relief that something better, fairer and more just was on its way to Australia. Relief that leadership and accountability is back. Relief that our nation's diversity would finally be better reflected in the new parliament. Indeed, it's better reflected in this chamber. Relief that progressive values that prioritise caring for one another, looking after one another and valuing people could once again be at the heart of federal government. So many people contributed to the outcome, volunteers, and of course all the candidates who ran. I want to acknowledge in the other place my good friends Matt Burnell and Louise Miller-Frost, who've been elected at this election, and also the many candidates who put their hands up for Labor values, like Sonia in Sturt, Julie in Grey, Mark in Barker, Marissa in Mayo, and Treman and Joe and Belinda, who all were candidates for Labor's Senate ticket. All of these candidates committed to our values, committed to what we were trying to achieve, to get an agenda of fairness back at the heart of government. And I want to congratulate Tony Zappia MP and Steve Georgianis MP in the other place on their re-elections, and note that I'm very proud to continue to serve alongside Senator Grogan, even though, like me, she was not up for re-election this time. And I do also want to acknowledge that in the ministry we have some great South Australians in Senator Wong, Senator Farrell, Amanda Rishworth and Mark Butler, all of whom I congratulate on their appointments. In my first speech in this place in 2019, I outlined my belief that one of the greatest tasks of Labor is to make Australia better for the generations to come. We are custodians of the institutions and the levers of policy within government to make it better, to make it better, to make it fairer, and we're on our way. I've been proud to sit in this place during the Governor-General's address last week, where the values, goals and bold ideas of our new Labor government were read into the record. It is an incredibly humbling honour to be part of the Albanese Labor government, which I know will place fairness, boldness, urgency and unity at the centre of our plans to tackle the challenges before our nation. Our party, the Great Australian Labor Party, is the great reformer of Australian history. Whether it's the establishment of Medicare under Bob Hawke, native title, the NDIS, we do the big things, the hard things, which change our nation fundamentally for the better. And I know the reforms of our government, led by Anthony Albanese, will lead to a fairer and better Australia for the next generation and those to come. And I am especially humbled by the task ahead with the referendum on a voice, and indeed to the broader implementation of the Uluru Statement from the Heart in Full, which Labor is committed to delivering. Voice, treaty and truth. In Garma, we saw the Prime Minister set the roadmap for the path ahead. This is the start of the public discussion. It's the start of the process which I hope will lead to a voice. And if we get there, I know that voice will make a difference, a practical difference. And I believe South Australians are ready. South Australians are ready for voice, treaty, truth. They want to walk in unity towards that path. As a senator, I'll take my leadership responsibility to walk with Australians towards that goal, and to do that in a way which is collaborative and respectful. But ultimately, I deeply hope this Parliament, the 47th Parliament, that is something that we can achieve and be proud of achieving together.